Welcome back to School Transportation Nation podcast. I'm Ryan Gray, Editor-in-Chief of School Transportation News, joined by my associate, Taylor Ekbatani, Senior Editor. Say hello, Taylor.
Hello, Taylor.
I love it. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at Transfinder, the leader in school bus routing, and by Ride, real innovation delivered with excellence, the electric school bus manufacturer, and by School Radio, your source for reliable radio communications. A little bit later, Taylor, you're going to be talking with Katrina Morris, the Executive Director of the Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation, and just a couple weeks ago, down in Reno, Nevada, or up in Reno, Nevada, depending on where your perspective is, STN Expo West, she received the Peter J. Grandolfo Memorial Award of Excellence, highlighting student transporters that especially exemplify the best of the best in terms of service of students with disabilities. So Katrina, she's been a longtime supporter of students with disabilities out there in Michigan. And so Taylor, going to be looking forward to your conversation with her in a little bit. We have some headlines, a lot of great headlines to go over this week. Not a lot of time, but before we get to that, here's a quick message.
Hey guys, the safest family of electric school buses just got bigger. Meet the creator, the all-new Type C bus from Ride, with seating for up to 72 students and a range of over 170 miles on a single charge. The creator joins the Achiever and Dreamer to form the most advanced lineup of electric school buses on the road. Visit ride.co to discover the future of student transportation. Ride. They're changing the way kids get to school.
Okay, we're back. So Tony Corbin, he was up in Boston last week at the National School Transportation Association annual meeting and convention. A lot of news made up there. Some awards. So we have an article on stnonline.com, just kind of reviewing some of that, but especially want to congratulate Karina Noble of National Express for being inducted into the NSTA Hall of Fame. She is a past president of NSTA, leads their communications and marketing there with National Express, the second largest school bus contractor and vehicle contractor, I should say, in North America. So congratulations to Karina. And the NSTA Contractor of the Year goes to Suffolk Transportation, Suffolk Bus, out there in Long Island, New York. So congratulations to all you out there. Well-deserved. And we'll certainly be having some special guests on our podcast here in the coming weeks around those NSTA awards. So congratulations to everyone, and lots of awards given. Now, also some of the big news made last week, Taylor, at NSTA, Ronna Weber, who's the executive director of the National Association of State Directors of Pupil Transportation Services. She was there to release the much anticipated National School Bus Stop Violation Survey, those results. So there's some good news, Taylor. Actually, after it got adjusted a little bit because there was an error in initial reporting from some data from California. But every year, Taylor, NASDIPS looks at this one-day voluntary count nationwide. We had 36 states participating, plus Washington and D.C. And these one-day counts basically happen everywhere from January through May. NASDIPS then records all the data, receives all the data, tabulates it, and they extrapolate out from that. So what was interesting was that I mentioned the overall extrapolations came down. So the last several years, NASDIPS has been saying that's over 180-day school year nationwide, the data indicates that illegal passing incidents could occur upwards of 45 million times. So that's a crazy number. This year it came down to 39.3. So that is good news, but certainly, as NASDIP's indicated, Mike Steer, the president there, said, hey, this is still a problem. It's going in the right direction, but still a lot needs to be done. So with that actual survey, again, 36 states, 114,471 school bus drivers participated. It's voluntary. That's about 31% of the nation's total. So a pretty good sample size. Reported over 69,400 vehicles pass their buses illegally over these one-day counts.
So just to clarify, Ryan, the one-day counts, each state that participates chooses the day, right?
Yeah,
and then all the school bus drivers in that state count that day.
Well, the ones that participate. So
Okay.
like I mentioned earlier, it's some of them. One state, I think, maybe New York, starts in January, and then other states just kind of tiered. So it's not one specific day in the year. It's just whenever the states participating decide that that's the day. So, and again, it's voluntary. So that's why we don't have the full 500,000 school bus drivers or whatever that number is, but 114,471. 69,408 vehicles passed their buses. So over those 36 states and those 114,000 bus drivers that were reporting it. So NASDAQ said that over 218,000 illegal passing violations occurred on this quote unquote one day, whenever that day was that was held by the states. So it's, a step in the right direction, certainly. And, I think that the awareness of this survey, number one, helps get the word out. And school districts obviously are always having this discussion, this conversation in the local media. Here we are, schools starting up here as we're recording this. Some schools are about ready to go back, and if not, this week, next week, in the weeks to come. So we have that awareness. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has been finally attuned to this issue. They have a new ad campaign in development, similar to the click it or ticket ads that went out in the 90s and 2000s for seatbelt usage. So they want to do something similar with illegal passing of school buses. We, of course, have the technology. A lot of conversations in Reno about the different law enforcement programs that are available with various bus camera companies. And trying to, from a violation standpoint, have the stick instead of the carrot for drivers to get them to understand the law. And then you have other programs like the applied information work that's being done with Audi. So that's a pilot test where on the dashboard of cars with the Internet of Things now and with smart cities developing, where motorists, when they're coming up on a school bus stop, they get an alert right on their dashboard that says, or in their window that says, "Hey, school bus stop, children ahead." So all of these things I think are helping, but still 39.3 million is a lot, Taylor.
Still too many. I agree. Yeah. And I'll be talking to Trina a little bit more about this later, but she's also doing a lot of work, a lot of PSAs. And I think, getting the word out, a lot of, transportation directors, executive directors are getting the word out, putting information out there, contacting local news media, especially, with new stop arm cameras and that technology, letting the media know, hey, this is now on our school buses. So if you pass, not only are you potentially injuring a kid, but you're going to get a ticket for it. So all of the different, all of the segments, I guess, are coming together and I think helping reduce. And I hope next year it's even less and less and less as we continue to report on it.
And more news made, switching gears a little bit, Taylor. The EPA, they popped up out of nowhere. Everybody had been wondering
out of nowhere
what's been going on with the Clean School Bus program. They made an announcement last week.
Yeah, I still feel like they hid a lot of information still, right? They said, 2024 information is still coming. So I don't know exactly what that means, if we can anticipate more funding or what that funding is going to look like. But in terms of the other programs, so 2022 and 2023, they kind of just reminded people to stay up to date on their purchasing orders. They're, submitting all the required information that they need to do. I know they're doing site visits for the 2022 rebate, so kind of doing audits. So it seems like they're awoken and they're telling, hey, directors, if you guys got these awards, we're still out there. We're still doing our due diligence. You need to do yours, complete those purchase orders, send us that. Like, we're sending the money. So it seems like all is okay. I'm hesitant to say okay right now, but all is okay for the rebates and grants that have been announced and have been awarded to school districts. So now we're just kind of still in that wait and see on what's going to happen for the next year.
Well, I think we hadn't heard anything from EPA for a long time. So I know I had some conversations last week with some folks, WRI, for example, and everyone was buoyed, I guess, their hopes in it's some positive movement, at least, that they're now coming out with some information. So we know that there's been work going on in the background, but a lot of districts still aren't getting their money, or they can't get into the portal. That's what we've heard. So at least this is a positive thing. And we'll just see. They referenced that 2024 rebate. Of course, that those applications were closed in January. So we didn't know anything. The fact that they said information is coming, alluding to there's going to be more rebates awarded, as well as more funds, because there's still another $2 billion left to award in that. So some good news there. Related to electric buses, we also got some more clarity on Lion Electric. So we know that we have a new owner of that. And Taylor, so with that one, a lot of folks were wondering and worried about service. And the new owner came out and said that all previous sales of U.S.-based Lion buses, those warranties are null and void now. So as the new company now known as capital Lion, operating basically just out of Montreal and servicing, or the Quebec province, I should say, and servicing school boards there. But, a lot of folks, I think the writing on the wall was that, we don't know what's going to happen. A lot of folks thought that the assets were just going to be sold off at auction. But the company continues on, but just not in the U.S.
Yeah, I know we kind of saw the writing on the wall, and you guys have been talking about it on the podcast, kind of what this Lion situation would look like for customers, and we've been reporting on it. So I think this is just kind of the final straw, putting Lion Electric to bed, at least for the U.S. Market. And, like we reported on, there are other options. I know that you wrote about it a little bit in your editor's take, so I don't want to give it all away. So check out the August issue. But there are other options for getting, technicians and mechanics kind of certified, or not necessarily up to date on working on the Lion Electric vehicles. So I don't know how much you want to share, but
yeah, well, I will say that I don't want to give too much of a peek under the hood, so to speak, but it's no secret that WRI, the World Resources Institute, and their electric school bus initiative are working with CalSTART to develop basically a working group of trying to pull together what options and what resources school districts and school bus companies have for that. So spoke with them a little bit last week. Think some things are coming, some things are in the works. It's interesting that, we earlier this year, we wrote about First Student and their availability and interest in providing service to school districts and other bus companies. I don't know how that's would work, but First Student developed their own in-house program to work with Lion buses because of concerns about working with the former Lion Electric company and some of the service and support. So they said, hey, we have so many buses, and I think they lead the way. I don't know exactly how many buses First Student has, but we know there's 2,000 Lion Electric school buses out there, and First Student has a good share of them. And they said, hey, these are our buses. We need to know how to work on these. We need to have our own program. We can't just rely on the manufacturer because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So they've developed stuff. I know that the former Lightning e-motors, they have the folks that are tied with that. There is a new service that's coming up. I believe it's called Enforce. So there are some options, and I think we're going to just see more come to market because, again, 2,000 school buses, that's quite a bit there to keep in mind that those buses, would technically still be under warranty in a lot of them. And now that is no longer being offered by the new owners of Lion, then that's a big void to fill. So we had some great high voltage training out in Reno with our National School Bus Inspection Training performed by our friends at ASE, the Automotive Service Excellence. So the blue checkmark guys. A lot of you out there in the nation, you have your different S1 through 7 certifications. Some of you are master school bus technicians through ASE. So there's a lot out there that's available to folks, and it's just going to be more so. And we'll certainly keep everybody up to speed with how all that is going. Okay, so before we transition to Taylor and Trina's interview, here's a quick message.
We're back from ST and Expo West, and what a blast the Transfinder team had meeting everybody. They held several classes, had an amazing response to their ride and drive, showcasing their award-winning driver app, Wayfinder. One of the highlights was the top transportation teams panel discussion. The leaders of the 6 winning teams demonstrated just why their teams won. These were thoughtful leaders who listened to their teams, made changes to show how they cared, and yes, even had to make difficult decisions. As Transfinder's CEO Antonio Civitella said, it is so rewarding to honor these men and women who truly do heroic work every day. You can see how much this recognition means to these teams, and that's what makes it all worth the effort. Transfinder started the Top Transportation Teams program in 2023, and it continues to get bigger and better every year. Learn more by visiting toptransportationteams.com to learn more about how your company can join the program. Also visit transfinder.com. Hey guys, what are you doing November 6th through the 11th? I'd recommend going to the TSD conference. That stands for Transporting Students with Disabilities and Special Needs. Chances are this is a service that is so vital to your school transportation operation, your students, your communities that you serve. We'd love to elevate your ability to serve the special needs community. McKinney-Vento. There's so much happening in this world. We do a deep dive training at the conference. We've got great speakers. We've got attorneys, behavioral experts. We've got transformative leaders in disability policy. We got the co-founder for Safe and Sound Schools, Michelle Gay, Glenna Wright Gallo, Betsy Helfrich, all these great keynotes that are going to help you guys and help your teams. So go to tsdconference.com. Also lock in our super early bird rate and save 33% by August 8th on your registration. Again, tsdconference.com.
Good morning, nation. It is Taylor Ekbatani here. Well, I guess it might not be morning when you guys are listening to this, but we are recording in the morning, so I'm going to go with good morning. But I have a guest with me who honestly needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyways. We have Katrina Morris. She is the Executive Director of the Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation and the Director of Transportation for West Shore Community School District in Michigan. So welcome, Katrina. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me back, Taylor. It's always good to come and talk to you.
And you're a returning guest. You've been on, I think, really early in the season.
Yes. Yep. We've been on a few times.
Yeah. Well, great to have you on and dive into, who Katrina is a little bit and what you are doing in Michigan.
Well, so like Taylor said, I'm Katrina Morris, and we are extremely active. Our association, Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation, in Lansing, fighting for what we believe is best for our students, public safety in transportation, as well as what do our drivers need. And I think that's an area where a lot of people kind of forget. It's always focused on the school and what they need at school, which is absolutely true. But you also have to remember we have to get them there. So we're constantly reminding Lansing that, hey, don't forget about the black and yellow. We're 40 foot long. And I know sometimes we are easy to forget, but, make sure that you don't. And then is the district, I'm looking at changing a little bit of my role there so I can focus more on MAPT and be that full driving force that they really need right now as well.
I think that's one of the things too, that you're not just focused on the students, and not that to say that, you aren't focused on the students, but you're also focused on the drivers and their safety and what they need to do their job.
And I think that's a big part, because everybody, they'll do all these trainings for the schools, right? In which our schools definitely need them. But then what are our drivers doing? Well, during that time, they're usually taking the kids home, because they'll do it on half days. And they fail to bring back those drivers into the fold to say, hey, here's the training now for you. So we have really stepped up across Michigan and really pushed for the training of our drivers. And, through the association, we will go to districts, and during their middle of the day, we will help train drivers if the district would like us to, or we have them come up to our conference, and it's completely free. So they have a whole day that is dedicated just for them and what they need to do to put extra tools on their tool belt to keep them safe, as well as to ultimately keep our children safe.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big things that you did a couple years ago was create the proactive response training for school bus drivers. Let's dive into that a little bit. Where did that kind of come from, and what does that look like? I know you've talked about it, at our expos, so let's kind of unpack it.
Yeah, so, it kind of started with, I took a training, and it was for teaching classroom staff how to secure classrooms and stuff. And I started saying, what are we doing for our bus drivers? What are we doing for the buses? And everybody just kind of looked at me, that squeaky wheel always gets the grease. Well, I was a major squeaky wheel, and I think probably a major pain in a lot of these people's sides. But I am so fortunate in the area that I live in, Mason County. I had the state police and the county sheriff and the Ludington Police Department, as well as the emergency manager, all get together with me and say, Trina, why are we trying to look at somebody else to see if they will build something? You have the knowledge. We can help support you and back you. So let's build our own. And let's make it specific for bus drivers. And one of the things that we said after we got this, built is we're not going to charge for it. If we seriously think that this is what our drivers need to help protect them and our kids, why would we ever, make someone pay for this? So we go across the state. I've actually gone out of state several times and taught it. And we are teaching people how, in what we did in Michigan, how they can go ahead and do this in their state. And, we do it in different districts across our state still. In fact, in 2 weeks, I have 3 districts that I will be at, 3 separate districts that we will be teaching this in. So it's something that, we wanted to make sure that it was going to stay relevant from the time that the state gave us the money moving forward. We didn't want it to be something like, here's the money and it's a one and done. We wanted to make it relevant and still move it forward. So when we go to teach it now, I talk to law enforcement, and a lot of times I'll have someone from law enforcement teach it with me. But it's always like, okay, what has happened in our industry lately? What can we pull from that we can add to this so that we're not taking away from the main topics and how we want this, but we can add and ensure that it's going to stay relative moving forward.
So you continuously update it, and, you said kind of to what's going on currently. And I believe it's being taught now 33 states.
Yes. Yep. In 33 states, not maybe statewide, but in 33 states, districts have reached out and said that they wanted the curriculum, which we give for free. I pass it right along. Michigan Department of Ed gave us the money for this grant. We actually gave back a lot of it. And, part of my thought process was, if you're going to entrust me with this money, I'm going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, and we're going to keep it going. And then we were able to shift some of it back to them. So that way, maybe in the future, they'll work with me a little bit better too. But, you gotta always think ahead. But it's amazing to see and to hear the responses back. Because I always say, please give me, just an update on how your drivers took it. And the biggest thing is please don't just stick them in front of this and walk away. Mm-hmm. This is the start of conversation. We want that conversation started. And it's amazing to hear, oh my gosh, my drivers have said, this is what we have been waiting for. This is what we have been looking for. And, they want more information. And so it's amazing to see what that has done throughout the country as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome. And what has your driver reaction been to the training, or what you've heard from drivers, around the states?
I will tell you, in our state, it's about time. We have asked for this. We have asked for somebody to do something like this. And when we thought, well, we'll train it like every other year, and when we did the surveys, the drivers said, do you think it's enough for us to have it once every other year? We need it every year. So please bring it back every year. So like I said, we'll have law enforcement go with them, and we keep that updated and fresh, because otherwise it's going to get stale and people aren't going to, pay attention. But it's really been that they have looked for something, and everything that they have been taught, they've had to adapt to the school bus. This is something that they don't have to adapt to the school bus, because it was built from a bus driver, in that actual setting.
Yeah, I remember when, you announced the grant and we talked about the training and we put an article up. A school bus driver in Michigan reached out to us, Estelle Graves, and actually had a hijacking experience where a student held a knife to her throat. And I know you guys have kind of talked through that. And I think you guys were on a virtual expo. Okay, yeah.
We did. And then 2 years after we put out the initial training, we did an update to that training. And in that training, it was, kind of like the first part of it. And then we had Estelle Graves come and speak and tell and share her story. And, it was so powerful, because this was something, again, that had to go statewide. In our state, every other year, you have to have 6 hours of continuing ed for all bus drivers. So this went to every single bus driver again, just like they had it, 2 years previous. But then they got to see Estelle's story, and it was just amazing for them to be able to hear and to see, and here it is in Michigan happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great. I truly believe she is just an absolutely strong woman. I still text her and speak with her, and it's just amazing to hear her say at the end, and after 13 years, I am proud to be a school bus driver.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's still driving. She didn't let that experience define her. And I know she's appreciative to have that, training now in Michigan, because while it doesn't happen often, it can happen. And so I think that's all about preparing the drivers for the what if.
And I think that's what we do in our schools, right? I mean, it doesn't happen in every single school, but it's for the what if. And if we are taking the time to do that with our classroom staff, which, like I said before, I'm fully behind, but our drivers have the most safety sensitive position that you could possibly have in a school. And they're on their own, and they have no support and backup. They need this training. So it's just really important that, we get that out there and give it to whoever needs it.
Yeah. I love that. And, like Trina said, she's giving it away for free. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to, teach your drivers it, definitely reach out.
Great thoughts. Let's take a quick break. Hey, safety is a #1 priority for everyone in school transportation, and even more so when needing to communicate in a school bus setting. School radios, push to talk over cellular or POC radios, are the safety enhancement you need to provide clear communication across all aspects of your fleet. Schools, SROs, that's school resource officers, and beyond. School radio helps take safety and connectivity a step further by offering interoperability solutions that bridge conventional two-way radios with POC systems, creating a unified network that boosts effectiveness and safety. This integrated strategy guarantees smooth communication in both emergency situations and daily activities. To learn more about how school radio can improve safety in your communication methods, visit school-radio.com. That's school-radio.com.
You're doing so much, so I don't want to, focus on one aspect of what you're doing, but you're also working with the Michigan legislator on a couple things. You're working with NASCAR, lots of big things happening.
Yes. So, in Lansing right now, we've got a couple bills going through, starting that process. And so we're starting that process of getting ahead of them to make sure that, our voice is heard and our opinion is heard. So we have been actively meeting with senators and representatives on both sides just to make sure that they understand, what MAPT's role is in our state, as well as what they can expect from us. And we also offered up that, hey, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to ask. And it was so interesting because yesterday I met with it was a senator, and he said, I don't ever remember hearing of PA 187 before. And that's in Michigan, our transportation codes. And he said, but yesterday I had a constituent ask me some questions, and now today you're talking about it. And so after him and I got done talking about what the bill was and stuff like that and our position on it, then he said, can I ask you some questions? And it's like, absolutely, that's what we're here for, And so if we can have, people in Lansing reach out to us, to me, that's a huge win, because that means we're getting our word out there and we're getting it out to where people are saying, hey, if there's something related to transportation, we're not going to say anything. We're not going to do anything with it yet until we contact the transportation special people and see what is their take on this, how do they feel about this, and then let's go from there. So that was amazing yesterday. And then also yesterday, we are making sure that we're going to get this NASCAR thing up and going. It's been on the horizon for 5 years. We were all set, and then, COVID hit, so it was a bummer. But, and then we kind of re-energized it again last year, and it's going to happen. And our goal, come anything barring really bad happening, is that we are going to have it out and to everybody for School Bus Safety Week in October.
Oh, awesome. So just to give a little flavor, so you're going to have a NASCAR driver and a school bus driver, right, on the track.
Yep.
And then a NASCAR driver is going to stop for the school bus and then say something like, even I stop for the Reds.
Yes. Even I stop for the Reds flashing. Please help us protect the 1 point whatever million children that ride school buses each and every day. When the Reds are flashing, there is no passing. We have done so many things, and we have advanced so far with technology, from the bus cameras and companies, and being able to work with law enforcement and, issue citations, and to making the laws even harder on people that, break that, because ultimately you're putting our children at risk, but we have to educate people too. And I always tell everybody, yes, it's the public, but at the same point, we have to do a better job on educating everybody on what it is we do, when we do it, and why we're doing it, because they don't understand. It's just like the boulevards. If you've got to turn in the middle, you've got people on both sides stopping that don't have to. If you have your hazard lights on, they stop, but yet they'll go around them when it's red light. So this is one way that we can help educate the community, and say, listen, this is what you have to do. When those reds are flashing, there's absolutely no passing. So, and like I said before, they have a huge voice. I have a voice that, maybe it's that squeaky wheel that everybody's just like annoyed with hearing. Okay. But NASCAR's got a big voice, and they have a big target audience, and who better to help, and then we also have a couple other little things in the works, maybe possibly something with the Detroit Lions, a former player. Something with us. We've also looked at other people from Michigan and who could we get, and how could this, work? How could we fit this together? Different genres, and it really is just getting that information out there to people. And, Michigan's not alone in doing this. I know there's that big, huge rivalry with us in Ohio. The state down below. Hurts me to say this, but when it comes to student transportation, we're on the same page, and they are actually supporting and backing us in this. So they actually came up to our conference this year and presented us with a $10,000 check for funds to ensure that this happens. And, they're willing to be with us every step of the way, as well as we've got other sponsors who will be helping us with this. So it's good to have friends in low places like.
No, that's awesome. And I think, working with NASCAR, and you kind of tease this Detroit Lions, so I'm excited to see where that goes. But I think it also appeals to the younger generation, people who maybe don't fully know the rules of stopping behind a school bus. And so, I see this NASCAR driver. Oh, okay. it kind of prompts, I think, that safety element in them.
That conversation, and this is what, just like with proactive, we want the conversation to get started. How can we help? How can we support? Reach out if you have questions. There's, in every state, there's one of us, an association in every state, or reach out at the national level, because we're all here to help. And people don't want to hurt a child. That's not what they want to do. Whether they're distracted, whether they're running late, whatever the cause is, I can guarantee you it's not to injure a child, but that's ultimately what happens. And so when we can bring it to light in that way, that's, to me, that's going to be a win. If we can save a child with this, campaign, that's going to be a huge win.
Yeah, honestly, I was so devastated to read the National Transportation Safety Board report that they put out on the Wisconsin crash. He was a 17-year-old who was texting and missed the stopping red lights, hit a 13-year-old, killed her. I couldn't imagine. I mean, I don't think that boy was intentionally trying to hit that child, and he was distracted and he wasn't paying attention. And now, 17 years old, his life and the 13-year-old's life, it's over. And it's just it's heartbreaking.
It is. It's devastating. And to know that this is still happening, we had a little commercial that we put out, a PSA, a couple of years ago about when the fines got, higher about this and about getting on buses, that you couldn't do that without, permission from the bus driver and stuff. And, I had talked to somebody from the broadcast channel and they said, this is still happening. And she said, my aunt 20 years ago was hit walking to her school bus. And I just said, oh my gosh. And she goes, so yeah, we're going to give this airtime because I can't believe it's still happening. And so I think that, just because it might not happen in your area every day, or you might not hear about it, that national survey really does tell everybody this is happening all over the country. And we just have to better educate and inform people what it is they have to do. I had a senator, when we were fighting for these bills a few years ago, say, you mean I have to stop the whole time and okay, you guys both know me. I have no filter. The representative next to me went, oh, Trina. And I just kind of sat there. But I said, oh, you have to think about it. And he goes, at a stop sign, he goes, this looks just like a stop sign. He goes, at the stop sign, I stop, I look both ways, make sure it's okay, and then I can go. I had to sit back and thank goodness I didn't open my mouth and spew stupid. But it was like, oh, okay, I can see your point. I'm still thinking, but I can see your point in what you're saying. We need to educate people on that one. That's bad on us. We haven't done a very good job of that.
Well, I also think it's, part on the DMV, right? You go and get your permit test and I think it's like 20 questions and you just answer them and then you do a road test and that's it. There's no other follow-up. There's no, showing exactly when to stop. And I think school bus gets lost in that.
I will say we did have our video the last 2 years play at our Secretary of State's offices across our state before school started as a reminder. So when you went into the office to renew or do whatever, you sit there in line forever. So they've run those little ads and ours was up there. So hopefully they'll do it again this year with us. But again, it's all about the education. We also take our buses. We'll do they used to do Family Night Live where they would shut down the whole avenue in our small town. And we would bring a bus out there. And I have games. I have a Plinko board that, you land on one and it asks the student a safety sensitive question. Like, why do I have to stay seated in my, while the bus is moving? Or why do I need to keep my hands and head inside the window? And it asks stuff like that. And so we're hoping, when we do that, we're also interacting with the parents. That, hey, this is why we have to do this. We put the mirrors on a chair and we put a course and we made the parents sit in the chair and go backwards through this course. And then we timed them because, that timing them gives them that little bit of an anxiety, kind of like when you're driving. And no, we don't drive in reverse, but we got a whole bunch of kids behind us and they didn't. And then we put it on the board and, the one with the fastest time would win an award after an hour, and every hour we did that. But our whole goal was now put 70 kids behind you screaming. How do you think your time would do then? So we're trying to do things in our community that is showing people what it is that we do and why it is so important, why it's so safety sensitive, and also, hey, help us with your kids. We're not trying to be mean. We don't want to kick them off the bus. We want them to get to school, but we need them to get to school in a safe manner. So help us work with your kids and, let's all be on the same page.
And I want to say that the outreach is working because the National Association of State Directors of Pupil Transportation Services just put out their illegal passing survey, and the number is going down. Still too many, but it's the public outreach has got to be working, is what I would think.
I think so. I think we can do better, because we still have people passing, but I think that the word is getting out there, and there's other ways that we can still go about doing this. We just have to sometimes it's funding related, but sometimes you have to work around that funding. How can I do this in a way that, is going to be true to everybody and still get our point across, so like doing the Friday Night Lives, like doing events like that in your community, put your bus in parades and stuff like that. It just is another reminder that we are out there, and we give out color books on how to safely ride the school bus. And then on the back, it has, what do our lights mean? We have 6-foot signs that we will bring to teacher parent conferences, if asked, that say, what do our lights mean? So that way it's a reminder when you go in through the parent teacher conferences that, hey, these are what the bus lights mean. We had one school this year that, you've got a number that hangs on your rearview mirror for, when you're picking up your kids. Well, on the back of it, that school put, what do our bus lights mean? When do you need to stop? So I think it's those things that we have to start thinking outside the box. And that was a blank space. That is going to remind that person, because their child isn't using the bus, but they're driving around those buses. So it's going to remind them every day, this is what I have to do. So I think it's things like that we can continue to do better at and get better across the country. And then I think we'll still continue to see those numbers come down.
Not even just a district standpoint, what would your advice be to other organization leads who maybe don't know where to start with public awareness campaigns or don't know how to approach, NASCAR or the Detroit Lions? What advice would you give?
I'd say either reach out, and I would be happy to share. But honestly, don't be afraid. What was NASCAR going to do? Tell me no. Okay, I am no better off today than what I would be tomorrow, right? So what difference did it make? And honestly, when I called, I'm like, well, they answered the phone. Oh my gosh, and I was surprised. And then they returned my phone calls after that. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Don't be afraid. The only thing that they can say is no. And then literally, you are no better off than what you were before. So take that risk. There's no reward if you don't take that risk, right? And we've had the Pistons reach out to us and say, hey, we want to do a bus driver appreciation game. We've been doing this. This will be year number 4 this coming year that we've done that. We have done in the past, we did for 3 years, a Red Wings school bus driver appreciation game where they give our drivers tickets, cheaper at discount. And the Pistons were giving them like a t-shirt that said transporting Michigan's future, stuff like that. And it was just a thank you from the Pistons to the drivers. And really, they have a thankless job. And for an organization like that to step up and say, hey, thank you, or like NASCAR to say, oh my goodness, this is what is going on and we want to help you, or the Lions or, the Red Wings, that is helping too, so all these people getting involved in it, just reach out, and when you want to start something in Lansing, did I do it right? Nope. I had no idea what I was doing. But I went and said, I believe in this so much that we are going to get this and I'm going to do it. And I just went for it. Don't be afraid.
No, I love that. I think that's great advice. And I think that really shows your passion for what you do and the passion for the students and the drivers. And the passion is one of the reasons why you were awarded the Peter J. Grandolfo Memorial Award of Excellence at STN Expo Reno a couple weeks ago now, and you're the 18th recipient, and you had no clue. We brought you out there. We're like, hey, you're gonna come to the morning session. I think you were talking in the back with our editor-in-chief Ryan Gray, and you were just completely oblivious. And they said your name. What was going through your head?
Shock. I went in and Ryan's like, hey, I got to talk to you. So he had texted me before, are you going to be here? And I'm like, yep, I'll be there. And we went and we sat down and I had a superintendent call me from the state. And so I got up and I went to the back and, I'm dealing with that. And all of a sudden I get done and Ryan starts talking to me and I heard nothing. And literally when they said Morris, I kind of stopped and I looked up and I said, oh my gosh, that's me. Because I saw my picture up there. Because I'm like, well, this Morris is here, And I just stood there. And he goes, you have to go up there. And I'm like, okay. And I stood there because I was like, and I don't get like that. It was such a huge honor. And, in our state, I'm the one who gives out awards. I do this, so to be honored at this level is it was absolutely amazing. And I think that, people who are with said it best. We just had to come back and see her actually be speechless for once because they don't ever see it, But yeah, Tony was right too. When I went and I got the award and they took pictures and I'm, my legs were shaking and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. They thought this much of me. There's other people that are doing this too, and it was amazing. And because of what Peter stood for and because of what Linda continues to do with him and continues to bring him, and his memory in with everything, it was a huge honor. A big shock, but a huge honor.
Yeah, Linda Grandolfo presents the award, Peter's widow, and she runs our registration and does a really amazing job of continuing on his legacy. I never met Peter, but her spiel in the front talking about him and the award, it really encapsulates student transportation and everything that he stood for. So truly an amazing award and you're very deserving of it.
Well, thank you. It was, I was very shocked and then I was very honored. So it was just amazing.
I know I was talking to some of your Michigan associates and they were like, yeah, Trina said, why did they give it to me? I'm just doing what everyone else does. And obviously you're going above and beyond everything that we just talked about and all the work that you're doing. So I know that you're humble and you're not, boisterous about accepting the award, but truly, truly you deserved it.
Oh, thank you. I have always told, and I tell all my drivers in my district, the minute that this becomes about me and not about our students and not about our drivers, I seriously need to leave the industry because that's not what we're about, and I think when you talk to transportation directors and supervisors and drivers from all across, they all feel the same way. We're just down to earth, just hardworking, servants. That's what we do. We serve our children, and other people's kids, and we treat them like they're ours. And so it was a huge honor.
So to wrap it up, before we usually do this at the beginning, but we got talking and chatting, so we're just going to end with this little tidbit. Can you kind of give us a little flavor into who you are? I know you started as a school bus driver, but for some of the listeners who maybe aren't super familiar with you, how did you get started in the industry and where did your passion come from?
So I got started, my kids went to a different school and they needed a bus driver and they kept saying, we need a bus driver. And I said, yeah, well, I get the multi-fender discount every spring when I bring my car in. So you don't want me driving a bus. And they would laugh. And I finally did it. My husband's like, well, you could do this. And I'm like, yeah, great. But I wanted to be with my kids and I wanted to do something in the school with my kids, and be able to help other kids as well. So I started driving a bus and I was, I had a full-time route at one of the schools in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I was a sub driver. And I just learned I always had loud buses. My kids were always loud on my bus. But you know what? I was okay with that because they were safe. They were sitting in their seats and they were doing what they had to do. They weren't hitting everybody, And I moved and they needed a dispatcher. And I'm like, yeah, no, I cannot do this. I cannot route for everybody and deal with all these parents because I'm a parent and I knew, I'm like, But they talked me into it and they're like, we're going to support you through this. And that's how it's been every step of the way, the next step was my superintendent saying, hey, we have this position for you. And I'm like, well, are you trying to get rid of me? I thought I was doing okay, dispatching. And he's like, no, we want to help you move forward. And he goes, but we're always going to be here to support you. So if you ever need something, we'll pull you back. And I have just been fortunate that that's how it's really been. And, once I started getting into that, I started seeing all the stuff that was going on and all these people passing us and, all the different things that the drivers never had. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. Why aren't we thought of like that? And then when people are looking at downsizing or saving money, what is one of the first departments? So transportation. But you don't understand what transportation does. And you don't understand what it takes to run transportation. And so I just thought, if we can just let people know what it is that we do and what it takes, maybe we could somehow gain back some of that negative feeling from people that they have towards the bus drivers and help to elevate them to where they truly need to be. You don't need a degree to do this. But not every person can be a bus driver because not every person can love and care for our kids. And that's ultimately what you have to do. They're not great hours. You work split shifts, and I did that. But as a mom, that was great for me because I got to be there. I got to go home during the middle of the day, get the house clean and, do whatever else I had to do, get my errands done. I went home after school with the kids. And I had the holidays off. I had the weekends off. I had the summers off. What better job could you have? And then I'm looking at this going, and people look down on drivers for this, and they're paid what? We need to fix this. So that's really just where, it came from. And I just had a lot of people behind me being able to lift me up and support me in all of my crazy ideas. They're like, 100% we're behind you. And I'm like, you're nuts, but okay,
Well, it's been 20 years of you advocating for the industry, so we really appreciate it, Trina, and we appreciate you jumping on the podcast and sharing your insights with us. And like she said, if you guys are looking for the training or if have any questions, I'm sure she would love to hear from you. Do you want to provide your email and people can reach out?
Absolutely. It's executive-director@mapt.org.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And it was great to see you. I know our listeners don't get to see you, but great chatting with you. And thank you so much again for jumping on the podcast.
Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate you.
All right, Nation, great episode. Special thanks to Ryan Gray, Taylor Ekbatani, Katrina Morris. Congratulations again. A well-deserved award, that Grandolfo Award for her and for Michigan. Got to appreciate that. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Transfinder, Ride, and School Radio. We appreciate them. Make sure and reach out to them. Let them know you heard about them on the STN podcast. I know you faithful Nation listeners. Be sure to give our sponsors love. That is what we appreciate too. Got to kind of pay the bills, keep the doors open, the lights on. Couldn't do it without you. So we appreciate you, Nation. Don't forget, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to pods, up on stnpodcast.com. Go to stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. We got tons of coverage on STN Expo, photo galleries, recaps, videos. There's so much you can get on our website. Spend some time on there and enjoy. Share it with your friends too. Guys, we love you, Nation. We'll see you next week.